Hi, health fitness specialist students. This short video is going to be just covering chapter 23 in your textbook. So we're looking at training clients who are athletes. You'll notice that it's a pretty short chapter. We're not going to get in depth because in your class with Renee, Theory of Strength and Conditioning, that class really centered around training an athlete. So you should have gotten a lot of good information from that class and have just a base, a good understanding of how to create some programs for some different types of athletes from that class. But we are going to touch on just a few things in this chapter. So the first thing I want to point out is that as a personal trainer, we are training clients from both ends of the spectrum as far as their health. So we have those deconditioned, those folks who have never exercised before in their life, or they haven't exercised in, since childhood, for example. We have those folks who have cardiovascular disease and metabolic disease and, overweight and obese, to those clients who are, athletes who have a low percentage of body fat and are those athletes. So it's kind of both ends of the spectrum. So we have a chance to train not only those special populations that you've been covering with these past few chapters, but also those, those elite athletes and those people who are severely deconditioned. But we have to note that programs for our athletes are definitely a lot different than those that we put together for that general population. So there's quite a bit of difference in how we put together a program for an athlete. So some of the factors we have to take into account when we design the program for an athlete, number one is that training principle, overload. So the training stress or the loads, they have to be progressively increased for gains to occur, as we've been talking about all semester, right? We can't continue to do the same thing week after week with the same load and the same stress. We have to change it, right? We have to apply that overload to see the gains. And then also specificity of training is another one we have to think about. We need to design programs that have at least one exercise that's going to mimic the movement pattern of that sport. Okay, so if we know what our athlete, what is their sport, we need to create exercises that are going to mimic that movement pattern. That way it's going to transfer, it's going to have a good transferability into their sport as well. So that's something to think about too. And then also periodization is a big thing that we use with the athletic population. And again, you've probably talked about that quite a bit in Renee's class, but what is periodization? It's that systematic process of planned variations in a resistance training program over a training cycle. Okay, a systematic process where you have planned variations, whether it be in the amount of repetitions you do, the amount of weight you're lifting, the rest period you're doing between the sets, sort of thing. The goals are met by manipulating the volume and the intensity. All right, the volume, sets, reps, okay, and the intensity, how much weight we're lifting. So periodized programs are divided into these three basic cycles. So you have your macro, which is the biggest one, right? Macro cycles usually last from a year up to 4 years. Okay, so macro cycles are the biggest. Then you have your mesocycles, which are the next one in line. That's several weeks to a month. And then you have microcycles, which are the smallest, and they go from 1 week up to 4 weeks with daily and weekly training variations. So those microcycles constantly have variations happening within them, whether they be daily or weekly variations. Okay, so microcycles make up your mesocycle, which makes up your macrocycle. Okay, three areas of the periodization program. Also, your textbook gets into the phases, the cycles and the phases of a periodization program. And so if you look in your text, you'll see there are 4 to 5 phases. So these are all considered mesocycles, each one of these phases. And we find that we can have gains from this by repeating this 5 mesocycles, so there's 5 cycles here, more than once a year. So doing it at least 3 times over the course of the year is a great idea. So the first phase we call the preparatory phase, basically. So it's called hypertrophy or preparatory phase. So the goal of this particular phase of the program is to develop a muscular metabolic base. So if we were to design a program, a linear periodization program for maybe a strength or a power athlete, when we're looking at the initial training phase, okay, this hypertrophy phase is going to go anywhere from 2 to 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, 2 to 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to be going through this phase. Also, we want to look at training each body part at least twice a week. Okay, and we look at the FIT principle. So if we break down the FIT principle for the hypertrophy phase, frequency, we want to do about 4 days a week. So if you did, say, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, so Monday and Thursday would be the same exercises. Tuesday and Friday could be the same exercises. So you could do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but not train that same muscle group 2 days in a row. Intensity, how much weight should they lift? Right around 75% of a 1 rep max is good. Time, we'd want to do probably around 4 sets, anywhere from 8 to 12 reps with a 1-minute rest period in between those sets. So this routine can definitely be performed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Excuse me. During this phase, the athlete can also perform recreational activities like basketball, racket sports, things like that. But the primary focus of the hypertrophy phase is on resistance training. If they have a goal of reducing body fat, if that's an important part of their off-season goal, then we can make adjustments to the aerobic activity that they're going to perform. But no, we don't want to do too much, as it may have a negative impact on their overall strength. So just a few things to think about during that hypertrophy phase. If we go to phase 2, you've got your strength phase. And the whole goal here is to increase maximal muscle force. Okay, so this phase again is around 2 to 3 weeks long. And as far as frequency goes, about 4 days a week again, same as hypertrophy phase. Okay, so day 1 and day 3 could be the same exercises. Day 2 and day 4 could be the same exercises. Intensity, though, since we're training for strength, is a little bit higher. Around 85% of a 1 rep max is good. Time, okay, 4 sets again is a great rule of thumb. 6 to 8 repetitions, though, per set. Rest period's a little bit longer. 3-minute rest period in between your sets. Also, something else to think about during this particular phase is we can start incorporating plyometric exercises. So on days when you perform high intensity upper body resistance training exercises, maybe perform low intensity lower body plyometric exercises. On days when you perform low intensity upper body resistance training exercises, perform high intensity lower body plyometric exercises. Okay, so we can incorporate a few plyometrics here if we wish. If we go to the third phase, which is called the power phase, okay, and in the power phase, we want to increase speed and power. So that's where we're going to start incorporating speed and powerful movements. So a lot of your power lifting movements. So this phase is anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks long. So when we look at frequency, again, 4 days a week. Day 1 and day 3 can be the same. Day 2 and day 4 can be the same. Your intensity, though, since we're focusing on power, is a lot more, 90 to 93% of a 1 rep max. And as far as time goes, again, we're looking at 4 sets, anywhere from 4 to 6 repetitions per set, with about a 3-minute rest period. In addition, you can start incorporating speed and agility drills during this particular phase. Okay, they're also going to help to get their team to work together. So it might be a fun thing to start incorporating those types of drills here. The last phase is the peaking phase. Okay, so the peaking phase, their goal is to attain peak strength and power. So the athlete is beginning to make final preparations for competition, or they're starting off preseason training camp. So the focus is getting in anaerobic condition to play a competitive season. So this phase is about 2 to 3 weeks again. And frequency, again, around 4 days a week. Intensity is greater, so greater than 95% of a 1 rep max. And your time, you're going to do about 5 sets of 1 to 3 reps. So your goal is to achieve a 3 rep max with each lift. They might fall short of 3 reps on the last 3 sets, but that's okay. rest anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes in between those sets. So things like, the push jerk, the clean, the snatch, the clean pull, those are all great things that can be incorporated as far as powerlifting movements. In addition to that, you can start incorporating long and short distance sprints during this, as well as interval training. So for example, starts, the first 4 steps out of the blocks or the first 8 steps out of the blocks. Those are great short sprint activities to do. And of course, your last phase is that active rest phase. In this phase, they're really not going to be doing a whole heck of a lot. There's not some specific programming. They are just, here and there, getting into the gym, doing a few things. They're ready to go. They are in their season, and they're probably playing games multiple times throughout the week, so they don't need to be on a specific program. So those are the 5 phases of the periodization program for an athlete. Lastly, there's 2 different kinds of periodization models. There's the linear and nonlinear. Your book gets into both. So for the linear, it involves gradual and continual increases in training intensity and gradual and continued decreases in training volume from one mesocycle to the next. But there's no variation in the number of assigned sets and repetitions within each mesocycle. So there is a change in load, but we're keeping the volume constant. So we sometimes see weekly fluctuations like a heavy day, a light day, a moderate day. And if you look on page 23.2 or table 23.2 in your book, in table 23.3, you'll see some examples of some linear models. Nonlinear, on the other hand, is also known as undulating. That involves within week or microcycle changes. Okay, there's a change in load and there's a change in volume. These changes are made every 2 to 3 weeks, or some exercises can be varied. So if you look in your textbook, you'll see some examples of a nonlinear program on table 23.4. So periodized programs are very effective due to the variation. It allows the athlete to recover from an assigned load and assigned reps. It allows that recovery period. Nonlinear programs, though, are used often, so training can continue throughout the season. So when you have sports that kind of go basically most of the year, we can do these nonlinear programs for. So research does suggest that these programs may be more effective, nonlinear programs, more effective at promoting strength gains than linear. So something to think about if we're going to do a linear or nonlinear program for our athletes. One other thing I wanted to point out to you was a website, exerciseprescription.net. So it's exrx.net. And if you go to that website, I'm going to show you real quick, there are a ton of resources on it, and it's all free. So for example, if you go to, let's take a look, there's an exercise library that basically, just like I showed you with ACE, it has a lot of different exercises in it. Also, it's got different resistance training exercises listed here, and sports conditioning, since we're talking about athletes. It does give some examples of programs for different athletes and periodization and what that's about. But just I encourage you to take a look through this website because there's a lot of great resources on it as far as program design that can be very, very helpful for us as a personal trainer. So take some time and go through it and see, if there's things that you can use and apply to your programming. So that is it for Chapter 23. Have a good day.